Should the color of your skin define your beauty? Should it be normal to fear for your life when you get pulled over for speeding? Should you have to make yourself appear less big and threatening as you cross the street? Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regeter, and today I'm joined by Tyler Merritt, actor, comedian, author, and founder of the Tyler Merritt Project. You may know him from his viral video, Before You Call the Cops. Join us as Tyler explores his own experiences growing up in America, why he has become a social justice activist, and how you can be an advocate and an ally. Tyler, you are absolutely amazing. I'm really excited to talk with you today. But before we begin, I really just want to check in with you. How are you really?
Oh, how am I really? That's a good one. I'll tell you. So when you're in the world of social justice, or when you're in the world where you take it upon yourself to kind of give some guidance in rough times, when things begin to happen and take place in the world, people long to hear your voice. They want to know what it is you have to say. And back in 2018, when I first kind of stepped into this place, I used to think that I had to respond to everything. If anything happened, I felt like I had to respond to it. And I realized really quickly that that kind of pressure was not good for my mental health. It wasn't good for the expectations that I thought were put on my shoulders. And it wasn't good for my output. It meant that I was really kind of just responding to things out of sheer the need because I felt like people wanted to hear what I had to say. So when you ask, how am I now? How am I really? I've come to a place in my life where I feel like as a Black man in America, we never have an off day. But I've gotten to the place in my life now where I feel like I have a voice inside of a community that I can kind of pick and choose where I lend my voice to things. And that has created kind of a healthy environment, not only for my community, but also for myself, that when things feel heavy, I'm taking the time to kind of take care of myself. I don't feel the need that I have to respond to every single thing in the world. It allows me to kind of pull into myself and really figure out the things that are important where my voice needs to be used. And all of that has put me in a place that currently right now, some of the things that we're dealing with, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So we're dealing with how crazy our legislation here is, right off of the shooting at a school called Covenant that killed a total of 6 people. So that's just heavy in the state that I live in, right? On top of that, we have Ralph Yarl, who went and knocked on somebody's door and was shot twice for just going up to the wrong door. We have a white woman in New York recently who was shot in her driveway shot in a driveway for pulling into the wrong driveway. So we have gun violence all throughout the United States. We have the issue of race that continues to boil over. And when I hear questions like, how am I really? The simple answer is I'm doing the best that I can in a world that needs us.
What an amazing way to kind of summarize it. There's so much going on, and it seems to get heavier and heavier every day. I live in Florida, so dealing with those legislation is, it's a great time here. I love it. It's very, very overwhelming a lot of times to just be in social justice, to be in mental health, to be an advocate, to want to have a voice, and knowing when it's time to focus on myself, when it's time to take a step back and then lend my voice when I'm ready to what's important to me and my values, my beliefs, and what I want to leave behind, instead of feeling like I need to argue with people all day that don't want to listen, focusing on where I need to be, who I need to be. I mean, for me, that is overwhelming. Now you're doing this on a much wider scale. So I am so inspired by you, so amazed by you and really excited to get to learn more about you and your journey and what inspired that initial video before you call the cops.
Well, before we go on, because I think inquiring minds want to know, how are you, Francesca? How are you really?
Thank you for asking. I am doing okay. I had a very, very busy couple of weeks. I'm a grad student, and we had final exams, term papers,
Sure.
like that. Everything happens at once. And on top of that, I decided it would be a really great time to allow myself to get behind on my own work. So I am now 7 episodes behind in podcast recordings and recording
Mm.
7 episodes this week. So I am getting to that point of I should check in with myself and start focusing on what's important each and every day. So I am honestly perfect timing for a conversation with you.
I think it's great that your listeners know that I think sometimes when we listen to podcasts, we just imagine that they just get dreamt up like you have nothing else to do in the world
Yeah.
except just have a podcast and that's all you do all day long is sit around and talk to people. When the reality is this is just an add-on for you to put education into the world, to do those things that are so passionate and close to you. And it is work. So let me just say on behalf of everybody that listens to you and to me and for me, thank you for what you're doing, Francesca. Thank you for taking the time and energy out of an already busy schedule in a state that needs you there on the ground more than ever before. To take time to have conversations that matter to people. It really does make a difference. It really does matter. And you are 7 episodes behind, but I know that everybody who's listening right now is going to be forever grateful when you get those done.
Thank you so much. It is to me, having conversations is so important because I didn't get those conversations growing up. Like
Sure.
in any capacity, it was kind of like life is just kind of passes you by. You ask what or why. People are like, because I said so, because that's the way it is. Those
Yeah.
are the answers I got. And I ended up struggling really bad in a psych ward after 3 suicide attempts, going, why didn't I have
Mm,
any education, any conversation, any awareness? I saw how many people, there were 40 other people on my floor. None of them had those conversations. And it made me so angry that we have the ability. We all have voices. We all have the
right.
ability to listen. We all are curious, have curious minds. Why aren't we engaging in conversations? Why aren't we trying to educate ourselves? So when I started the podcast, it was a way for me to be able to engage in conversations, to learn more from people
Right.
and give other people that chance to learn. So I'm very thankful for people like you who want to come on the podcast and allow me to create these conversations, because conversations can't happen without other people.
You are so right. So I didn't mean to scoop way off of the subject, but I just wanted to make sure that we get that out there. The reason why I made the before you call the cops video, and if you're one of the like last people in the world who haven't seen it yet, um, please feel free to Google it. Just put in before you call the cops, or maybe we can add a link to it. I'll tell you, it originally came. I made it in 2018 during a time period where it was the first time that white people had really started to see black people, black men especially, get murdered on camera by police officers. And there was so much debate. It's a little bit different now. I mean, don't get me wrong, the debates are still here, but this was pre George Floyd, right? So I think there was something about watching George Floyd that people were able to go, oh, like cops are human and not every cop is good. Like not every cop is making a wise decision. Because in 2018, when a lot of white people first started to see black people get shot on camera by police officers, there was this weird conversation happening that sounded something like, well, what did that black man do wrong? What could he have done differently? Or maybe he could have did this, or maybe he could have did that. And there was just this continual conversation of maybe it's the black guy's fault that he was shot. if he would have just did something differently. And what I don't think people were understanding is that Black person's life became a threat, became threatened as soon as those blue lights turned on behind him. And I think that something that people weren't understanding in the world is that if you call the cops on a Black person, especially for no reason, you in your mind, you may be going, hey, I want to call the cops to help silence this disturbance that's happening next door, or something looks weird on the street, I'm going to call, or this guy looks suspicious, so I'm just going to call a cop. But what people weren't realizing is as soon as you pick up that phone and say, hey, police officer, there is this Black individual over here, you are now putting my life in danger. It's not just hopefully a cop will go over and fix that situation. No, there is a possibility that I may not make it home now because you decided through your own personal feelings that I was a threat to you. And so when I made the video before you call the cops, I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of strip down to the basics of who I was and look dead in the camera and tell people hey, I'm going to say some things about myself. And I just want you to know who I am. And so, of course, I went on and I said things like, I love my mother more than life itself. If you meet her, she will change your life. I said things like, I grew up in Las Vegas and that place still has my heart. Talked about how my father was a military man. I talked about how spiders are horrible and I'm afraid of them and I hate them, how bananas are disgusting, how I love basketball and hockey, how I love the musical Oklahoma and the NWA album, Straight Outta Compton. And I just simply talked peacefully to the camera saying, here's some things about me. And I just tell you this because I want you to get to know me better before you call the cops. So next time you see a Black man walking down the street, you may think to yourself, maybe that guy's just trying to get to his favorite bench to go and call his mother. Or maybe he's listening to a soundtrack of some kind of music that I also love. Maybe he's not a threat. And let me be clear. It is not my job as a Black man in America to have to humanize myself to white people. It's not my job. No one should have to do that. I should not have to fight to prove that I am human. But because I have an audience and I have the ability to use my superpowers for good, I wanted to create something that hopefully would maybe help save one life. And I'll be honest with you, Francesca, when I put that video out in 2018, my mom still jokes with me because in the video I'm not wearing a shirt in it because I wanted to give the idea that I was very just naked before the world kind of. And my mom to this day still gives me a hard time. And she's like, why in the world did you not put on a shirt? And I was like, Mom, if I knew 100 million people were going to see this video, I would have put a shirt on if I knew. But at the time I did it. But I'm so glad that people responded to it the way that they did, because it gave me the opportunity to create more content to have an impact.
I'll tell you, when I watched that video, I think that was one of the first times for me that I realized how quickly we often react based on appearance. If we perceive someone as threatening, how quickly we are to respond instead of just looking at every single individual as a human. I know something that I was taught was you see a man walk by, you grab your purse right away, grab your purse, walk away, run away. And I never realized that I was taught to react to somebody and react based on someone's appearance and never just thinking they want to sit on the bus next to me.
Right. And I'll tell you this, I think, let me be really clear. especially with women in the United States, like I think there has to be a level of always being aware of who's around you. There has to be a level of just not being naive in a world where there is evil. But I do think we miss so many opportunities in the world when we don't lean in to some of the things that we may think that we might be afraid of. If we were to lean in more into the fears that we have, God, the opportunity of beauty that we could discover on the other side of that fear is unending.
Yes, absolutely. And that fear, I mean, it's not helping anybody,
Yeah.
right? That fear, if you're the one who has that fear, your mental health probably isn't that great. You are stressed. If you're
Right.
receiving that fear and you can't go around without knowing that people are afraid of you just for your existence, your mental health can't be in a great place either. No
Right.
one's mental health can be in a great place when we are all operating solely on fear.
Completely. And listen, I want to say something really quick because I know your listeners probably know your backstory. They know that you struggle with suicide. Did you say 3 different times?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I just want to say to you, and I need you to hear this. We are so glad that you're still here. Um, the world is tough. The world is rough. And the confidence that you feel right now, the strength that you feel right now, may not be that same thing that you feel tomorrow or even later this evening. So, in this moment, when you and I are able to have an open and heartfelt conversation, I just want you to know as I look you in the eye that we are so thankful that you are here and the impact that you are going to have on the world is going to continue to be extraordinary. So anytime, if there's ever a fourth, fifth, or sixth time, I hope that you can remember moments like these and know that there are those of us who are not only cheering you on, but we recognize what you've been through and we see how much you've grown. And I say all that to say our mental health is everything. And especially, you're not new to this, but especially in Black culture, we have always just kind of been taught that our mental health is something that we deal with kind of internally and on our own, or there's a little bit of shame associated with wanting to talk to people about kind of the things that we're going through. And you're a testament that when things get hard, you can push through and continue to get better. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That was very, very, very kind of you. And I appreciate it because, you know, first of all, normalizing that we do struggle and it's okay to struggle, but to know that like you are valued and you're loved and you're still important is, I think, one of the most amazing feelings to have and to know. So I really appreciate you. And to your point of mental health in the Black community, there was a study done by the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry that said within the past 2 decades, the suicide rate of Black youth ages 10 to 19 had increased by 60%, more than in any other ethnic, racial, gender group. In the past 2 decades, we've seen that increase. And there are so many different components adding to that.
Yeah.
But these conversations are so important because we can't allow that to continue. We cannot, like, the fact is out there. The numbers are out there. We're seeing it happen. And if we're not having conversations, we're not understanding things that we're doing that's impacting that, that's increasing it, we are actively part of that problem.
Yeah, I'll tell you, 60% is major. That's not a small number. That's major. And I just want to say the age between 10 and 19. So I talk about um in my book. I talk about just one specific thing that was really hard for me growing up. I talk about multiple things, but one thing that was really hard as a male. Um, I've always been dark skinned, right? Like, in growing up in Las Vegas too, like, um, it's the sun's always out and your skin is constantly getting darker. And I was a blackety black boy growing up. And growing up as a teenager, I joke about it a little bit in the book, but this is true. This wasn't the time period where people thought that dark skin was attractive. Dark skin wasn't something that people were proud of. And people used to call me names and make jokes, and even teachers who thought that they were well to do, the lights would go off in class and a white teacher would say, Tyler, smile so that we can see you. And even the teacher might think they were joking or think it was funny, and students would laugh. But there was this weird association with being dark skinned, that we were not attractive. And back then, we didn't have the Idris Elbas and the Tyreses and all these dark skinned, beautiful black men that women and men loved so much. And that singular thing was hard as just a kid, as a teenager. It was hard like anybody else, but it was especially hard for black girls who their hair was different than their neighbor that, can just jump into a swimming pool and their hair was fine, or they were being called names that were just so outlandish because of the darkness of their skin. And women, girls at that age are different than boys. Like, boys aren't worried about being pretty, we're just trying to be dudes out in the world. But these black women at that age, having to walk through the weight of their skin color, something that they could not change, being considered not beautiful. Yeah. Just that singular thing at that age is enough to have trauma associated with that for the rest of your life. Now, that has nothing to do with just systematic racism. That has nothing to do with the history of what being black in America can cover, all of the hatred that you're going to get because there's just people that hate you. That's just a physical attribute that these kids are having to deal with in high school that everybody else is having to walk through because they're just trying to be cool. The weight that black individuals at that age have to carry is so heavy. And we have given a stigma to mental health like there's nothing that they can do about it. We aren't encouraging therapy. We aren't encouraging people to be honest about their feelings, not only in the black culture, but now just in the world. We don't typically encourage that. But that number doesn't surprise me. It saddens me, but it doesn't surprise me for the weight that these young black men, women, trans individuals have to carry in a world that has never really been suited for them.
Yeah. I mean, being in high school, middle school, I was insecure over all these little things that I thought made me not good enough. But I can't imagine what it's like when it's something you can't control the color of your skin. You can't control that. That's not something that you can just go and change tomorrow. You can't just change it like I can change my hair color, which I remember freshman year freaking out, having to change my hair color to make myself more beautiful, to fit in. I had to be blonde. Like, I can't imagine what that is like, to be judged or just feel like you can't be beautiful based on something that was beyond your control, and that doesn't make you different or wrong or not beautiful. So I can't imagine it. And thank you for talking about it.
Yeah, and at that age too, you also don't see the hope of the future, Like, I mean, I'm older now and I love my dark skin. I flourish in it. And I am so proud to be Black and dark skinned. But when I was in high school, you don't have the ability to look past the fence. You don't have the ability to look over the mountain to see that there's hope on the other side for something that is not changeable for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, everything feels like the end of the world, I think, when you're that age. I know for me, it was like, I didn't have anyone to sit with at lunch, and I was like, my life is over. Like, it doesn't
Right.
feel like it's gonna get better. It's so hard to see the future because it's a lot at that age. It's a lot of trying to figure out who you are, not knowing who you are, what you're supposed to be. So much happening all around you. It is really hard to even have this idea that it can get better.
Yeah, 100%. And
And then,
that's why I think what you're doing in the world is so wildly important.
thank you. And I remember that like notion people say like high school is the best 4 years of your life. And I was like, if this is the best it gets, like I think that's also part of the issue is that messaging, right? That this is the best it's gonna get.
You're like, if this is it, then really? This is it? This is the climax? Yeah. And you don't really have the ability to see past that.
Yeah, you really don't. And it's so disheartening because we're seeing suicide rates increase among our youth. It's the second leading cause of death from ages 10 to 25. We can see all these warning signs happening, and yet there's just not, I don't know. I don't even know what we need to fix it at this point. More conversation, more support, more love, less stigma, less hate, less prejudice. There's so many different things we need. More funding, a
Right.
better structural and infrastructure. There's so many things that we need to make support, treatment, help accessible, or even just preventative measures.
Sure. I think something that we can start with that is a tangible thing that we all can work on is helping remove the shame that is associated with mental health and the stigma that is associated with wanting to lean in to therapy and wanting to lean into talking to each other. Like we have to be able to, especially some of us that have a little bit of age on us now that have been through some things, we have to be able to say, listen, it is okay. Not only is it okay, but it is encouraged for you to take the time, energy, and and to really lean into the ability to speak to someone or talk to someone. It's okay to cry. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. We have to begin to scream that from the rooftops to start to tell people that it's okay to do that.
It's okay not to be okay, and you don't have to stay feeling this way. You
Yeah,
can reach out. You can get the support you need. You deserve to reach out. You deserve to get the support that you need to keep going because you matter. Just by existing, you matter and you deserve that support. And changing that messaging is the beginning of what we need to do because no one should ever feel like they don't deserve to get help.
100%, 100%.
So one thing you said was about now having age on you, looking back. So can you give some examples maybe throughout your life of how racism, stereotypes, prejudice, microaggressions, all these different things impacted your mental health?
100%. In my book, the very first chapter is a chapter called If She Only Knew, where I recall a story of me walking down a regular normal path that I do and coming across a older white woman who freaked out when she saw me. And in that moment, I knew that she was going to see me because I was walking up to kind of her passenger side of her car. I had to walk past her, and I was out walking, so of course I had a hoodie on to keep the sun out of my face, and my sunglasses, and a bandana on, and all this stuff. And I did everything that I could. I took my hoodie off. I took off my headphones so that she could know that I could hear her. I took off my sunglasses so that she know that I could see her. I smiled. I did all of these things to kind of do everything I possibly could to make her feel safer before she actually saw me. Then she turned and looked at me and she still freaked out. She still thought I was horribly scary and she was going to lock her doors and all this stuff. And I remember in that moment laughing at her, not because I thought the situation was funny, but just thinking to myself, like, if she only knew everything that I tried to do to keep what happened from not happening, and how how even the hardest that I try, I have to, in a world where I should feel like I am beautiful, I am a king, I am all of these things, I have to make myself smaller to make other people feel safer. And I remember later that day thinking, if I let moments like this ruin me, that would be really, really easy to do. Because walking around for the rest of my life thinking that I just have to be smaller for people to be okay, that's enough to really cause some trauma. And it's taken time for me to realize that I should have the right, I should have the ability to be as absolutely as big and beautiful as I want to be in the world. Not because other people's feelings shouldn't be important, but because it's my bigness, it's my hugeness, it's my personality, it's all of those things that make me great, that make me great. And I think when we're younger, we don't necessarily have the ability to see that. But now over time, as I continue to have experiences like that, I see that I'm only better when I'm able to lean into who I really am and I'm able to show my true self to the world.
It blows my mind that walking down the street, you felt like you had to take off your hoodie, take off your headphones, try to make yourself seem smaller, less threatening to somebody just because, and yet still seeing them react. For me, I mean, I walk around in a hoodie with headphones on every day of my life. I walk in the store, my headphones are on. No one's going to talk to me if I don't want to be spoken to. If I'm like in one of those moods, I never in a million years can imagine feeling like someone might see me and I need to take all this off.
Yeah. And that's just our everyday life. And that 60% that you talk about, it's because that's the kind of weight some of these kids have to carry every day. That's the weight they have to carry. And if they don't have a place where they feel like they can talk about it, where they can be honest with themselves, where they can lean into the beauty and away from the fear, those numbers are never going to change. So we have a responsibility in the midst of all the other things that we're trying to do in the world to let young Black women, trans individuals know that they are seen, that they are loved, that they are well taken care of, and that there is no shame in not being okay.
Yeah. And that reminds me, there's a video you did. It was the talk, right? And telling people, right? If you come in and face to face with a cop, take that hoodie off, don't move. Just all these things. I mean, that fear at a young age that you even have to have that conversation. I can tell you, I get pulled over a lot. Not the world's greatest driver. My parents would really like it if I stopped speeding or like stopped hitting cars. But my insurance raised. Great. But I never could imagine like my parents having to sit me down and have that conversation and me having to actively sit there and think, don't move, don't reach, don't anything. Because I mean, that moment I'm like nervous about getting a ticket. Like,
Yeah.
that's like, I want to call my parents right away and be like, I just got pulled over. I just hit a car. Like, I immediately want to call my mom or call my dad and let them know what's happening. I am probably shaking because I hate getting in trouble, even though it clearly happens a lot. Um, so to have to think about the fact that not only does this conversation need to happen and this fear is put in someone's head, but then you have to actively be thinking, don't move, don't do anything,
Yeah.
don't give them a reason.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I appreciate you bringing up kind of your experience of what it's like for when you get pulled over, because it's very different for Black individuals. And I try my best to talk to my young Black friends my teenagers who, you feel invincible at a certain age. And you're right. You get pulled over and you think to yourself, your biggest concerns are, am I going to get a ticket? I'm going to have to call my mom and dad and tell them I got another one, or I got pulled over and I was doing 75 and a 65, and how much is that going to cost me? Is the cop going to be nice? Can I maybe wiggle my way out of this? These are all the things that you think about. And for so many of us Black folks in America, our number one thought is, are we going to survive this? Are we going to survive? A ticket is the least of my concern. Um, if I get a ticket, I feel like I won the lottery. If I'm able to leave that situation with my life, then I've done well. And look, I want to say this. We are not set up. We are not built. We are not constructed to continue to watch men and women that look like us die on camera. There's a list of individuals now that we have seen being shot on film. That's trauma for Black people. We have seen it in front of our eyes. It's not a video game. It's not something that we watched in a movie. We have seen in real life situations people that look like us get pulled over and murdered multiple times over and over again. People share that stuff on Facebook, on Instagram, like it's just, oh, here's another one. But for Black people, that's trauma. So when I'm driving and the blue lights come on behind me, what I do, Francesca, is I immediately, even before I pull the car over, I pop open and get my information out of my glove box, set it on my lap. I turn down my music completely. I roll down my windows. And this is all before I even put on my blinker to pull over. This is in preparation to know that I have to be ready. I make sure to go ahead and grab my wallet out of my back pocket all before I pull over, so that when I finally get over to the side of the road, I don't make any slight movement that might seem threatening, that might be something that might be responsible for ending my life. Yeah. And then if I get through that moment, if the cop or whoever, and I want to be really clear. I want to be really clear here. I think there are individuals who will hear this that think that I'm being this way because I think all cops are bad. No, I'm being this way because I realize that I'm a threat to people. That there are cops that walk up to the window and they see me, they see my size, they see my color, and if they don't have any Black friends, they don't have any Black people in their life, they don't have people that look like me, there's a fear that automatically is associated with them that I can't change. And so I do everything I possibly can just to make sure that I'm going to get home safe. And there are millions of Americans that will never understand how that feels. That is what we carry. That is what those 60% of individuals between the age of 10 and 19 have to look forward to. That's the weight that we have in this United States of America that some people just don't understand.
I never thought about what a privilege it was for me to get pulled over. I'm so happy you explained it the way you did, because I never thought that the way I get pulled over is a privilege. How lucky I am just based on something I couldn't control, color of my skin, that I can, the size of my body. I can't control any of that. And yet my biggest concern when I get pulled over is literally like, I'm going to get in trouble. And I never realized that that was a privilege. Thank you for explaining it the way you did. And I hope that people really understand that. And my question to you is, what can we do? What can we do to change this? What can I, as a white person, do to educate myself, to not just be an ally, but be someone who's actively standing up and saying something, doing something, who's interested in not just posting on social media, but actual action? What can we do?
Well, let me say this. I think the easiest step, without any sort of question, without any sort of, it doesn't take much to do. If you're this deep into this podcast and still listening, you're doing it. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you extend your proximity. You listen to people who are different than you. You take in stories of individuals that are different than you. You lean into the things that you don't know. And that starts first by listening. And it starts by believing this. Listen, this is going to seem like it's ridiculous. It's going to seem like it's common sense. But I can't stress to you how important what I'm going to say is, Francesca. Believing Black people. Believe Black people when they tell you their experience. If you go online and you see somebody write a story about something that happened to them, or you go online and you hear somebody say something like, oh my gosh, my child had this event happen at school, and it not only felt like it was because of the color of their skin, but it felt like this teacher didn't blah, 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 blah. Your reaction as a white person needs to be, I want to listen and believe what this Black person is saying to me. Not, I mean, are you sure? Are you positive it wasn't something else? You're just being oversensitive. No. Believe Black people when they tell you about their experience. That's at the top of the chain. Listen and believe. And if you're able to do that, then that's going to begin to soften who you are to empathy. It's going to begin to give you empathy towards individuals that have different stories than you do. Now, once we get that out of the way, which I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but that right there is kind of the whole thing. We need you first to just start to believe. Then once you're able to believe, then there's times to be able to take action steps. I want to say something about social media really quick. There are some folks who, it's interesting, it's mostly white folks that I'll see this. I'll see a white friend of mine go and post something on social media like, Black Lives Matter, I just want to be one to say it. Then one of their white friends will come along and go, we need more than you just saying something on social media, go and do something. And it'll be a white person who will come and tell that other white person. I, as a Black person, am going, no. This might just be a small step for you, but thank you, because I will tell you the difference between you not posting or you not saying something. Your silence screams louder than anything. Your absence screams louder than anything in the world. When I don't see you posting or acknowledging or acting like something else exists in the world, that says more to me than anything. And now you might think my little post might not mean anything. It might not mean anything to you and your white friends, but it means the world to me when I see that you are not only my ally, but someone who is not afraid to say, here I am. Now, that's just social media, and that's just a small thing. Now let's go and let's move them into the streets. It means the world when I see that you come from your suburban community and go, I go to my white church with my 2.5 kids, with my white pastor every Sunday and go and worship white Jesus. It means the world to me if you decide to go, you know what? I'm going to take this Sunday and go maybe over to this Black church. I'm going to go and learn from individuals that are different than me. I'm going to go to a Black church where they aren't trying to figure out what their social justice committee is going to look like on a Wednesday night, but the social justice committee is that Sunday morning. Every single Sunday morning, a social justice committee at a Black church. When you begin to go and step into those kind of things to experience what's happening amongst people that are different than you, that's the stuff we see. That's the stuff that we respond to. I hear people all the time say to me, I just don't know how to make myself accessible to people that don't look different to me. Girl, please, you will take your whole entire family to Disney World. You figure that out. You figure out how to save, plan, and get all your kids and pile them in the cars so they can hang out with a mouse. Yeah. They can hang out with Mickey Mouse. But you're telling me you don't have the ability and or energy to take some time to take your kids to a Black History Museum or the National Black Music Museum or anything like. You're telling me that you don't have the energy there? No. Let us see you take the steps to incorporate yourself around people that are different from you. And it doesn't just have to be Black. I'm talking Muslim. I'm talking trans. I'm talking gay, straight. I'm talking about hanging out with individuals and being around people that are not like you. When you are able to do that, your empathy and your desire to do what's right is going to naturally change, because this goes away from just being a fictional idea. Black people aren't just an idea or a construct. They are your neighbors. They are the people that you care about. And as soon as that begins to happen, Francesca, that is when the world will change.
Tyler, you are absolutely incredible. I am not only very inspired by you, but very grateful that people like you exist and are having these conversations and are continuously making it a point to educate us, because it's the first thing you said, believing someone's experience. That never should be, you should never doubt someone's experience. The fact that step one is just to believe. And looking back, I mean, the past few years, we can see all the times we don't believe someone. Every single time we're seeing someone's experience, we're not believing them, or we're invalidating it. We're like, well, because of this, or, well, they were this person, or whatever, trying to come up with all these rationalizations. It really does start with us listening, believing, and people like you continuously making it. You know, it's not your job to educate us. It is not your job in any way, shape, or form, but you have taken that on your shoulders, and I am beyond grateful, because people like you are really what's going to change the world, and I'm very appreciative that you came on my podcast today.
I am so glad that you had me, and I'm excited to know that we are in the changing the world business together.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.